zero-gravity environment. He met several scientists aboard the space station, one of whom, named Kansu, turned out to be Go-eun's ex-boyfriend. After the introduction, Gong Ryong unwrapped the gift he had brought, a selection of ice cream in various flavors. But in fact, the delicious, melt-in-your-mouth ice cream held a secret tied to Gong Ryong's mission in space. It turned out that the chairman's son was infertile, something that had long troubled the chairman. Some time ago, his daughter-in-law Min Jung had given him a report. According to scientific research, in a zero-gravity environment, deformed sperm can straighten and recover normally. In order to secure succession of the corporation, Minjung proposed sending Gong Ryong into space to secretly fertilize her egg there. Upon receiving the chairman's orders, Gong Ryong's first reaction was to refuse. Sending human eggs into space was completely against protocol, but the chairman revealed that his son's sperm had already been sent into space earlier. Gong Ryong only needed to bring the egg. If the chairman succeeded in having a grandson, he would seriously consider Gong Ryong's relationship with his daughter. Even when the chairman got down on his knees and begged, Gong Ryong still firmly refused. Later, Gong Ryong met Min Jung to try and persuade her to give up the idea. However, Min Jung was even more determined than the chairman. In fact, she was Gong Ryong's colleague, a pediatrician who loved children. She earnestly pleaded with Gong Ryong to help fulfill her wish of becoming a mother. In the end, Gong Ryong was moved and agreed to carry out the secret mission. Min Jung's egg was hidden at the bottom of a vanilla ice cream container. Now in space, Gong Ryong distributed ice cream to everyone, each flavor carefully chosen based on their preferences. After handing them out, 2 sticks remained. Among them was the vanilla ice cream containing Min Jung's egg. By coincidence, Eve happened to pick up the vanilla one. Gong Ryong panicked, rushed after her, and asked her to return it. But Eve grew suspicious. According to protocol, everyone going into space was required to declare all personal items they brought along. Gong Ryong insisted that he had declared everything, but Eve wouldn't let it go. She knew he had only listed 5 ice creams in his inventory, and the vanilla one wasn't among them. Panicking, Gong Ryong started lying, saying he had just accidentally brought a small cup of ice cream and that it was no big deal, just a small oversight. However, suspected he had hidden something dangerous inside, and even placed the ice cream into the oven to melt it completely so she could clearly see what was inside. Gong Ryong, alarmed, immediately tried to take it out, but Eve pointed a gun at him from behind, forcing him to freeze. Taking the opportunity, Eve scooped a spoonful of the melted ice cream and placed it into a testing device. Fortunately, the results showed it was completely non-toxic, with a 100% safety rating. Relieved, Eve handed a spoonful back to Gong Ryong to eat. Trying to avoid suspicion, Gong Ryong reluctantly ate it. But just as he finished, Eve snatched the container from him, reminding him that in space, reducing waste volume was important. Without hesitation, she threw the cup into the trash bag. Watching this, Gong Ryong gasped in fury and quickly pulled the cup out of the trash, then frantically opened the bottom. To his shock, Min Jung's egg was gone. What Gong Ryong didn't know was that the real ice cream cup containing the eggs was now in the hands of Go-eun's ex-boyfriend, Kang Soo. Not only did Kang Soo get the egg, but he also obtained the sperm of the chairman's son. At this point, Go-eun finally realized her father had deceived her boyfriend. In truth, Gong Ryong was merely a delivery man tasked with bringing the eggs into space hidden in the ice cream. The embryo experiment had nothing to do with him. Clearly, the chairman didn't trust Gong Ryong's abilities and never actually considered marrying off his daughter to him. Desperate, Gong Ryong searched the entire space station for the eggs. At that moment, Go-eun called him and revealed everything. Upon knowing the truth, Gong Ryong immediately confronted Kang Soo and demanded the eggs back. But with a mere gesture, Kang Soo sent Gong Ryong tumbling like a puppet across the space station. Kang Soo still wouldn't give up. He insulted Gong Ryong, calling him a poor nobody, unworthy of marrying a chaebol heiress. Kang Soo advised him to stop deluding himself and give up while he could, insisting that he and Go-eun were the ones truly meant for each other. Kang Soo wasn't just a scientist specializing in fruit flies and infertility, he was also the heir to a global banking empire. But Gong Ryong wasn't someone who gave up easily. He had already made a deal with chairman to establish a reproductive clinic in space to help people with infertility conceive children. Driven by this noble mission, Gong Ryong entered his second day aboard the space station. Just then, an alarm blared through the station. Experimental mouse number 1, a female, was biting the other 2 mice. Ground control ordered Eve to euthanize mouse number 1, but she was too afraid, terrified of taking a life in the vacuum of space. Suddenly, mouse number 1 suffered a heart attack. The scientists were at a loss. Gong Ryong proposed performing open-heart surgery on the mouse, a procedure he had done over 100 times on newborns. With Eve's approval, Gong Ryong sprang into action, pressing on the tiny heart of the mouse as its breathing grew weaker. Meanwhile, Kang Soo stood nearby, mocking him with sarcastic remarks. But Gong Ryong refused to give in. The dying mouse in front of him mirrored his own desperate situation. He saw himself in it, and that gave him a surge of resolve. Then he switched places with Eve, and they continued chest compressions together. Perhaps it was the power of belief, but eventually, thanks to their combined efforts, the mouse's heartbeat was restored. Seeing a tiny life saved, Eve was so overjoyed that she burst into tears. In her excitement, she hugged Gong Ryong tightly and praised him as the most wonderful doctor. She even specially allowed Gong Ryong to call her by her name. Gong Ryong's heart raced uncontrollably at Eve's admiring gaze and smile. Today, the expedition team and scientists were resting. Kan-su suggested watching the lottery results together. As the commander, Eve went into the lounge to find Gong Ryong to join them. Gong Ryong was looking at photos of his girlfriend, but his mind kept replaying the image of Eve hugging him. Not long ago, after calling Gong Ryong, the group gathered in front of the screen, intently following the lottery draw. During this time, Kan-su volunteered to get coffee for everyone. What no one knew was that while they were focused on the lottery results, Kan-su secretly entered the laboratory to prepare fertilization for the eggs Gong Ryong had brought. After a series of experiments, Kan-su, as a scientist, succeeded in normalizing the sperm in the zero-gravity environment. Unfortunately, Gong Ryong came looking for him. Not wanting to get caught, Kan-su only injected 7 eggs and quickly ended the process. He then called the chairman to share this good news, confident that these 7 eggs would successfully fertilize, resulting in 7 grandchildren. The chairman felt very lucky to have entrusted this important task to Kan-su instead of Gong Ryong. Gong Ryong sneaked to the frozen storage to steal the frozen eggs, but didn't know the code to open the freezer. At that moment, Eve announced that tomorrow, the expedition team would conduct a spacewalk, so they needed to repair a damaged solar panel in space. Gong Ryong realized this was a perfect chance to create a distraction. It was the perfect opportunity for Gong Ryong to steal back the eggs. Moreover, Eve revealed to him that Kan-su would be participating in the spacewalk scheduled for tomorrow. During that time, Kan-su would be outside the station for several hours. Gong Ryong was thrilled and quickly asked Eve if there was a chance someone might not return from a spacewalk. Unexpectedly, Eve replied that spacewalking was extremely dangerous. In addition to Kan-su, she herself would also be joining. Hearing this, Gong Ryong grew anxious about Eve's safety. Before they came to space, Eve had told him that going on a spacewalk was like choosing death. Even experienced astronauts would write their wills before such missions, because the tiniest mistake, like a small tear in a glove, could be fatal in under 2 minutes. Commander Eve had long since accepted the fact that her life could end at any moment, but Gong Ryong responded seriously, saying that as the leader, she should carry the belief that she would survive until the end. Eve brushed him off, calling him nosy, but deep down, she felt a sense of warmth. To prepare for the worst before embarking on the spacewalk, Eve began writing her will. Meanwhile, Kan-su was on a video call to Earth with his ex-girlfriend. Go-in berated him harshly, accusing him of being shameless. She demanded he return Minjung's egg to Gong Ryong, saying that it was something Gong Ryong should be the one to do. But of course, Kang-su refused. Not only did he want to take Minjung's eggs, but he also wanted to compete with Gong Ryong for Go-in. Furious, Go-in couldn't hold back. On the other end of the line, she unleashed a storm of curses, using every vulgar word she could think of to lash out at Kan-su. However, what nobody expected was that Kan-su was not someone easily provoked. The more Go-in scolded fiercely, the more Kan-su found her beautiful and charming. Go-in couldn't even understand how she had once loved such an inferior man. She said that when he returned, she would teach him a lesson. While the astronauts were all preparing for the upcoming mission, Gong Ryong once again sneaked to the freezer, but was powerless because he couldn't enter the correct password. In urgency, Gong Ryong contacted a doctor friend on Earth and explained the situation that a woman's eggs had been taken, asking for advice. Hearing the sound of the centrifuge spinning nearby Gong Ryong, his friend confirmed that if the centrifuge overheated, it could explode. The space station's power would then be suddenly cut to prevent danger to the experiment subject in case of fire. At that time, the freezer would automatically